Hello and welcome back to the channel. And we are back with another episode in the series, How to Market a Business. And I have yet another guest with me who's going to cover an interesting topic. I have with me Prasanna CB. Hi, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you so much, Manmeet, for inviting me to this event, and I'm truly delighted to be part of this session here. Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you so much for doing this. He's also a Zenler user who has just started his journey with Zenler. And when I was talking to him, I realized that he has a very special skill. That is how to use storytelling to introduce yourself to your audience. And I think it's one of the most important skills. So today we are going to dive deep and spill some beans out of him so that we can learn how to use storytelling. So let's start, CB.
Yes, absolutely. So,
Okay.
what I say right now at the outset is that stories have an innate ability to convey a message to an audience. The audience could be a member of 3 or 4 people, or it could be even a greater number. It really doesn't matter. But what is really important is how do you impact your audience? What message are you conveying through your stories? And how do you connect with those emotions? That plays a crucial role.
Absolutely. And I would love to know that how did you get interested in the concept of storytelling?
Yeah, it is very funny when I think about it. Way back during my corporate stint, 20 years of corporate stint, I was associated with a firm which conducted an event called the Fail Camp event. And this event attracted people to come and share their failure stories in that event. So I prepared a speech, I wrote it in a piece of paper, and I actually went to the podium to give an address to an audience for about 200 to 300 folks. So once I went onto the stage, my hands started trembling, my legs started to shake, and my first story about my failure in a fail camp event failed big time. So that was a surreal moment for me, and I actually wanted to take this as a cue to build on the storytelling on the concept of narrating my stories to a larger audience. So though I failed in my first fail camp storytelling initiative, I decided to participate in the next edition in the fail camp event, which was again hosted by the same business unit in the same organization. So I participated in the event and I narrated the same story as to how I failed in the first edition. And here I am speaking to you in front of a larger audience yet again to share the failure story with you all. And this really gave a great round of applause, and people started cheering me from the crowd, and they kind of motivated me. That gave me a big boost, and I sort of started gaining momentum, and I started narrating the story with the gusto and verve. So the point I'm really trying to make here is that stories can be narrated by any person on earth, and people connect with your emotions instantaneously the moment you start narrating a story, more than just a fancy presentation.
Absolutely. And I think I love the way you started with the fact, and hats off to the company who has a fail campaign. That's such a good initiative to, promote people and encourage them. That failure is where exactly you start. So absolutely loved that initiative where actually it looped in. You got on that stage, you failed, and then from there you shared the same story in the second one where you actually got successful. So it's like a full circle, is what is really, intriguing me at this moment. But I'm sure when, the first time you would have got onto that stage, you would have written something. And then the second time you got on, you might have scribbled something the second time as well. And the crucial part I see here is actually crafting that story. So how does one actually begin, writing? Because I'm sure as much as the story is important, presenting that story is also important. So how does one craft a story?
Yeah, how does one craft a story? I think that's a very interesting question. So when I look at my history, I have actually been associated with some management sessions where one of the professors who came on to teach the students, he taught us about the 4 point formula. The 4 point formula is that SCQR, as they call it. It abbreviates to situation, complication, questions, and recommendation. So every time you narrate a storyline, you bring in this concept of creating narrative around these 4 parts, where you talk about the situation and then you address a complication in the situation. If there are any questions that you would like to ask the audience, you can ask them. And finally, you provide recommendations. When you follow this SCQR approach diligently, you'll be recognized as an expert in your chosen field of interest. And I've been following it in most of my blog writing as well as addressing the stories to a larger audience as well. So I found it to be very extremely helpful till this date.
Thank you for that golden nugget and the formula. I'm sure for the listeners, it is going to become easy now to actually implement it. And I would also love to ask that, you've mentioned that you also use the formula for your blogs as well. And I'm sure everybody who's listening to us, because our community, you would know, is about coaches and consultants. So a lot of times, every business owner is producing content for themselves in social media. And I feel that storytelling in social media becomes a very crucial part. So, when you're creating content for social media, what kind of stories should we share? Personal stories or made up stories or hypothetical stories? What kind of storytelling should we include in our social media content creation?
Yeah, I think for social media, it catches like a wildfire, right? Once a small story or a small snippet of information is shared across the social media, it just circulates, gets circulation, it reaches far and wide. So the only message that I would like to give here is that make it extremely authentic and very positive. The message has to be authentic and it has to be very positive, because if you are wanting to impact a larger audience and if if you're going to share it on social media, it's going to become viral instantly, and you would want that to be a very strong message which will impact people's lives. And if that's the case, you will always have to look at formulating a message which is very genuine from your heart, which is something which you really want to convey to a larger audience, and something which is very positive and impactful. So that's something which I would always look at addressing when it comes to giving a message out there.
Absolutely. So, what you mean to say is that when we craft a story out there on social media, it should either leave an impact on people, which could be a failure story as well, or something that people can take a lesson from, until the point that it is not negative. And of
Yeah,
course, the positive stories that help you take some good learning out of it.
most certainly.
All right. That seems interesting. And also, I would love to know that, when it comes to storytelling, a lot of people, have this argument, which I have most often heard, and please correct me if I'm wrong, that I don't have a story. People say that I don't have a story. How do I craft stories? So, like, do you agree with it, or what are your thoughts on it?
I definitely don't agree with that fact, because we are all going through stories, right? When even our lives, if we were to take cues from our own lives as an example, we are all going through experiences. An experience is again a story for us to narrate at a later stage. So our life itself is a collection of experiences. So I definitely refute that argument, because it's not certainly true. The fact is that we all go through life experiences, and we really want to share that experience to the outside world, if that is the case. And most of us out here connect with those emotions very quickly, and we really latch on to stories because they have an innate ability to create that intrinsic impact on every individual that we come across. So storytelling is something which has been handed out to us from ages, time immemorial, right? So it's not just something which is like the buzzword of chat GPT, which is happening very recently.
Yeah.
That's the buzz in today's marketplace, right? It has been like existing for time immemorial. So you are connecting with an emotion which has been handed over to us from an ancient past. So I think it is definitely true that stories will move the world, and I will refute this argument that nobody has a story to say. That's definitely not right.
Absolutely. And I think what I picked up from your thought was that every experience that we go through is a story. Now, all we have to see is that which experience is worth sharing. So every experience, like this moment, recording this conversation with you, is a experience. It's a moment. Now we have to decide if it is worth sharing with the world and what are the lessons that we can take from it. So
Sure,
every experience that we go through becomes a story.
sure, definitely.
Yeah. And I'm sure that you must have crafted tons of stories in your experience. What is that one story that is most special to you?
There's one story of uh, Viktor E. Frankl. Is the author of this book called Man's Search for Meaning, that has sort of impacted my life till this point in time. And I would urge the listeners to read this book. It's called Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor E. Frankl. The reason why I'm quoting this book is because of the fact that Viktor E. Frankl is the survivor of was a survivor. He's no more alive. He was a survivor of the Nazi Holocaust, And he talks about how he overcame the struggle in the concentration camp, and he visualized a future. He envisioned a future that never existed during the point that he was suffering inside the uh, Auschwitz, or the concentration camp. And he creatively visualized a future where he will be able to live a life, kind of become successful later in the future and things like that. And his inmates brushed this idea aside, saying that he is being crazy and zany in his thinking, and they said he's really weird and things like that. But he kept on persisting, and later on he devised a model which actually helped people to become successful using his formula. So the moral of this message is that struggles do happen in life, but are we creatively visualizing a future which will overcome, which will help us overcome these struggles and kind of become better at what we are doing at every point in time in our life? That's what this story suggests to us. So he's one of the most impactful mentors that I would quote. In fact, I consider him as my mentor, though I haven't met him in real life. His book is something, it's worth its weight in gold for sure, and its message is very, very impactful, and I still refer to its pages, just flip those pages, which I keep doing it once in a while to get inspired.
Definitely. And I think that's where the content in terms of books, podcast, conversations comes in, is because the people you can't reach, or the ones that have left the world, have a legacy that you can learn from. So I think that's a very solid point. And I think that really brings me to my next question, is that whenever we are moving ahead in life and whenever we are growing, there are people we look up to. Like you very rightly mentioned that you consider him one of your mentors. There is people we look up to. So I'm sure you would have had, your own share of storytellers or visual people or mentors that you look up to or you've learned from. So if you would like to share about your mentors.
Yeah, the two mentors that immediately come to my mind are Robin Sharma and Seth Godin. Seth
Oh,
Godin is,
nice.
yeah, these are one of the most sought after speakers and authors of management books and coaching, that the coaching industry. They have been impacting millions of lives. And one particular book which Robin Sharma wrote, The Greatness Guide, as well as the Monk Who Sold His Ferrari. Those two books have sort of inspired me to become better at what I'm doing. And Seth Godin's book is more about marketing, where he talks about being your authentic self while you're selling your services or products outside to the market. And another speaker that I'm looking up to is the author that I'm looking up to is storyteller by name Simon Sinek, who's the author of the Three Golden Circles. Simon
Yeah,
Sinek is a world famous speaker and coach. He's very, very novel in his approach, and he defies the he in fact challenges the status quo in most of his messages.
yeah.
And the art of storytelling can be learned from Simon Sinek because he's again a very authentic storyteller. Yeah,
Absolutely. I think those three names are some names that are very popular, and a lot of people would know about them, and people have been learning from them. And I
sure,
think they have contributed significantly to people in their growth. I would definitely agree to that.
sure, definitely.
Yeah. And I would love to know, what are your advice if, people listening to us are inspired, they would want to pick up storytelling and they would want to become storytellers. So what's the first step they should take towards storytelling?
The first step anyone should take in the journey of storytelling is that just open up yourself to the outside world. Don't feel constricted or restricted by the fact that nobody is willing to listen to me, or don't have such thoughts in your head. There is an audience for every story, and every story is
Yeah,
worth narrating. And we have to keep this in mind every single time we are wanting to narrate our experience outside to the outside world. So we really have to be very, very conscious of the fact that stories move the world. As they say, words make an impact. A story is nothing but a collection of sentences. Again, for root word is the sentence that makes an impact outside, and it makes people feel comfortable every time they listen to a story. And I would also like to allude to Ethan M. Raziel's book, McKinsey Mind, where he talks about the fact that clients don't pay pay attention to your fancy slideshows and colorful presentations. They pay for advice that add value to their business. So that said,
absolutely.
yeah, with that said, I believe stories have a greater role to play in today's world, because the world needs compassion, the world needs empathy, and all these can be interwoven in a storyline and in a narrative. So stories do make it happen, and that's important.
Absolutely. Like you said, that the world need compassion and people need to be authentic. It is more about people want to buy from people. They don't want to be, like you very rightly mentioned, that clients don't care about the bright presentations that we create. What they care about is the person behind those presentations who's leading it. So I definitely agree to the point that stories are going to move the world, is because people create stories, and we come back to the point that experiences create stories, and experiences are created by human beings interacting with each other. So
Very true.
absolutely, that was, I think, a very strong point.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Also, I'm sure a lot of people who are listening to this might want to get in touch with you. They would want to understand your journey and know about your story. So how can they get in touch with you?
Yeah, I'm reachable on my social media handle. My LinkedIn handle is CBP Venkat, which I can share it at a later stage. They can reach out to me through LinkedIn as well. My full name is visible on the screen, so if you search against this full name on LinkedIn, I'll be available for you to connect with me.
Yes, so once you share the LinkedIn link with me, we will put it in the description. So whoever's watching this video can pick up the LinkedIn link from the description, reach out to him, go say hello, and tell him that you heard him on the Zenler India channel.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much,
Thank
Manvi.
you so much. It was a delightful conversation, and I definitely feel and align with your idea that stories are going to move the world.
Thank you. Thank you for the wonderful opportunity to share my message across with the audience.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.